Happy Thursday, my friends. Hope everybody's week is wrapping up nicely, accomplishing all of those goals, just ticking off that to-do list one item at a time. Our president is going through some of his action items and having conversations with people around the world. You can see here, according to TRT World News, President Biden is busy on Ukraine. Apparently this morning met with the Ukrainian Prime Minister on Ukraine's situation. The Ukrainian Prime Minister is not Zelensky. It's actually this guy, Denis Shmyhal. He is His Excellency, head of the government. President of Ukraine is the person who nominated him. So that would be Zelensky, appointed by the president with consent. So this is who Joe Biden was meeting with, apparently. And let's see what else came out of that meeting. It says, we're in a critical window as Russia sets the stage for the next phase. And of course, we get another $800 million from the American taxpayer over to Ukraine. I don't even know what the total is. I mean, it's a lot. I mean, in the many billions at this point. Let's see what Joe Biden had to say about it this morning.
We had a good discussion. I've talked about what I'm about to tell you about today.
Thanks, Joe.
As well as he was thanking the American people for their support, understands it's significant. And
yeah, he should. It is significant. $800 million just, I guess, today, in addition to the many billions that have come previously.
We talked about keeping everyone together in terms of Europe, the European Union, and others in the effort to stop Putin's brutality.
Yeah.
But before I head out to the West Coast, I want to quickly...
Yeah, we're going to take a look at his calendar because he actually is kind of busy. You can see he today is going out of town. So he got up early, got the press brief. He gave us an update, 9:45 a.m. Eastern time on Ukraine. That's what we're listening to now. He then leaves. He departs the White House. He's going to go over to Portland, Oregon, where he's got several different events. President visits the international airport. So while he's at the airport, he's going to talk about investment. But the real reason for the trip, of course, a Democratic National Committee fundraiser. It's kind of amazing they want him to be there, but I guess he is the president still, so they may want to have him there. He's going to participate in a fundraiser, 6:30 p.m. local time, which is going to be late for Joe. I mean, he's in Oregon now. That's going to be, or Seattle, Washington is where that's going to be. So that's going to be East Coast from West Coast time difference for Joe. It's going to be a big 3 hours. That's 9:30 p.m. He's going to be wiped today. So good luck to him. You can see kind of struggling here as he continues on through this.
Update the American people on the latest steps we're taking to support the people of Ukraine and to hold Putin accountable for his brutal and bloody war. Russian forces have retreated from Kyiv, leaving behind them a horrifying evidence. And you've seen it, you reported it, your folks. And by the way, I don't say this often, but I think we should give enormous credit to the folks with your agencies that are on the ground in Ukraine, in these spots.
Oh, the media.
And
come on, Joe.
They're really, I've spoken to several of them. We owe them. But uncovering these evidences of their atrocities and war crimes against Ukrainian people is so clear to the whole world now.
Yeah.
Now they've launched and refocused their campaign to seize new territory in eastern Ukraine.
Back on
and we're in a critical window now of time where they're going to set the stage for the next phase of this war.
All right.
And the United
So we've gone multiple months now in this war, and everything that the Biden administration has done leading up to the invasion was ineffective. Everything that has followed since the invasion has been ineffective. And now we've got a new phase. So let's see what the current administration is going to do about that.
The United States and our allies and partners are moving as fast as possible to continue to provide Ukraine the forces that they need, the weapons they need, the equipment they need. Their forces need to defend their nation. Last week, I signed an $800 million package of security assistance to Ukraine. It included new capabilities like artillery systems and armored personnel carriers, equipment that is responsive to Ukraine's needs and tailored to support the intensified fighting in the Donbass region, which is a different war than in other places because both topographically it's different.
Yeah, tell us about it, Joe. Okay. So they're going to be giving more money, more weapons, more artillery, more systems to help the Ukrainian people. Where's all that going? Do we have any idea? CNN tells us that no, the U.S. doesn't really know. This article from April 19th from CNN People says Ukrainian service people here loading a truck with Javelin anti-tank missiles. But what happens after that? Who knows? Here, the U.S. has few ways to track anything of the substantial supply of anti-tank, anti-aircraft, other weaponry, saying this is a blind spot that's due in large part to the lack of U.S. boots on the ground over there in Ukraine. Maybe they can fix that by engaging the U.S. citizenry in this war. Is that what they want? It's conscious risk the Biden administration is willing to take. We just funnel it all over there. Just drop it off and good luck. In the short term, U.S. sees the transfer of hundreds of millions of dollars worth of equipment to be vital, they say. Senior defense officials said it's certainly the largest recent supply of partner to a country in a conflict. But the risk, both current U.S. officials and defense analysts say, is that in the long term, some of those weapons may wind up in the hands of other militaries and militias that the U.S. did not intend to arm. U.S. has sort of a history of doing that. In making these decisions to send billions of dollars of weapons and equipment into Ukraine, Biden administration factored the risk into all of this. Right now, the official said, administration views a failure to adequately arm them as a greater risk. So billions of dollars going into another black hole in another foreign war that nobody has any oversight over. And we're going to continue to see where this goes. The administration also making some interesting changes on their mask mandate because there was a lot of confusion about what they were going to do for quite some time before this actually came to a decision point. And now they're going to be appealing the mask mandate prohibition. We followed this case, made a full video on the ruling that came out of the Florida court. Originally, there was some confusion about what the White House was going to do. The Florida court came out. The federal judge said the CDC exceeded their scope. They violated the law. They didn't have the permission to go and just unilaterally impose this mask mandate without going through a public notice and comment period. They didn't do that. They tried to identify different exceptions that they justified in order to get around that. And the judge said, you can't do that. We live in a nation of laws. The law is pretty clear here. You violated that. And for a little while, we weren't sure what the White House was going to do. I speculated that they were going to be appealing this instantly. Was a little bit wrong about that. And they kind of were hinting that they may not have actually appealed this because there was some confusion. As the RNC tells us back on April 19th, Biden administration at 1 p.m., the day after the Florida order came out, says, yes, we're going to be appealing this. We covered Xavier Becerra, Health and Human Services, who said, yeah, we could look into this and probably appeal it. But that was the original position. And then Biden came out and said, no, masks should be optional. You know, well, that's the president. I guess they should listen to him. But then you realize, oh, nobody listens to the president. He doesn't even know where he is most of the time. So then the administration came back out and said, yeah, we're going to do masks on planes again. Here is the clip from the RNC. This is Psaki.
The CDC continues to advise and recommend masks on airplanes. We're abiding by the CDC recommendations. The president is, and we would advise all Americans to do that.
Should people continue to wear masks on planes?
2 p.m.
That's up to them.
We are right now in the process of deciding, and we likely will appeal that ruling.
Okay.
The CDC.
So we can see sort of a little bit of confusion amongst the administration, but that might be okay because it's just immediate, urgent ruling, and they have difficult times syncing up on a lot of stuff. But that is where we were on the 19th. Finally, we fast forward to the 21st. This came out Wednesday, the 20th. CDC issues their statement. They say, to protect the CDC's public health authority, beyond the ongoing assessment announced last week, CDC has asked the DOJ to proceed with an appeal. In the mask case, it is the CDC's continuing assessment that at this time, an order requiring masking in indoor transportation remains necessary. CDC will continue to monitor public health conditions to determine whether such an order remains necessary. CDC believes this is a lawful order, well within the CDC's legal authority to protect public health. And this is what this comes down to. Remember, when we did our deep dive on the unmasking, masking, free your face case, this was something that was a little bit nuanced. It wasn't that the CDC didn't have the authority to impose the mask mandate. They could do that, probably. We'll see. But they could have done it theoretically, at least they would have been on stronger footing if they would have done it through the proper mechanisms. The judge didn't go through this and say, you have no authority to do this at all, really. I mean, she kind of was implying that, but she was really kind of keying in on the idea that they did it without the proper mechanisms. There are notice and comment periods whereby the CDC can take public feedback before they implement these things. And if they would have done that, the judge would have lost huge swaths of her argument. You know, big portions of that would have been precluded because the CDC would have done things correctly. And the judge and the CDC may have been relying on the exceptions that are also in the law, but the judge was finding that those exceptions didn't apply to the facts of this case. So if the CDC didn't use that exception, again, there's a whole nother argument that if they did things correctly, they could have passed this theoretically. But that's not what they're arguing here. They're saying that they don't want to go through those proper mechanisms. They're saying the order that we issued violating those standard norms of notice and public comment and putting speed bumps in the process, they're saying that wasn't illegal. We have the full permission to do that. I mean, they were going and saying that they had permission to, preclude homeowners from throwing people out of their property that they owned based on what the CDC deemed to be a critical nationwide emergency. And so they're saying, no. We extended our scope. The hula hoop of our power continued to get bigger and fatter as it tends to. And they're saying, we're not going to back down from this. We want the DOJ to fight for this and make sure that that hula hoop boundary stays as big as we want it to be. CDC, they write, continues to recommend people wear masks. As we've said before, it's beneficial. So follow, the CDC guidelines. Always follow the CDC guidelines. And if these change, go back to the CDC website and take a look at what they're recommending here. But we're not talking about, the mask stuff. We're talking about the order and what the CDC is challenging. They're not saying that, okay, we're going to go back through the proper mechanics and change anything that we did, and we're going to try this all over again. No, they're saying what we did was right. The judge said, no, it wasn't, and pointed to a bunch of the statutes that we covered, but they're explaining we want that line in sand defended. They're not acknowledging defeat on this. And they're going to have to go and get an appeal on that basis, right? The court is going to have to review this and only review the arguments that were made in this setting. And they're saying that that line in the sand was appropriate for them to cross. They have the power to do that. In other words, there was no line in the sand. The CDC can do whatever it wants. So we'll see where this goes. The United States CDC, HHS, gigantic bureaucracy continues to expand. Even though the Biden administration is getting itself in sync, trying to figure out where they stand on these issues, the public has largely been over it. We saw videos, covered several of them, photographs of people on airplanes in the air while the order came down. Airline pilots announcing, yeah, take them off. Everybody's ripping them off their faces. Freedom! Everybody's thrilled about it. And of course, not the White House. There's all these troglodytes. These people are so unsophisticated, they don't even know what's good for them. So Psaki gets asked about this at the White House, says the following.
Go ahead. Thanks, Jen. Just to go back to the mask ruling, you mentioned some of the videos that we saw, but it certainly did prompt some very abrupt changes on Monday after it came down. Passengers being told mid-flight to take their masks off. Can you share more about what the president's personal reaction was
She still has hers on.
to the decision, to how it came down, and what unfolded over those couple of hours and the stories we're hearing about some of those flights?
Over to you,
I'm
Jen.
not sure we have a story here about some of those flights.
That we're hearing now about parents talking about being on a flight with their kids and then being concerned because they were mid-flight. But just what was his reaction to the decision and what happened then over the next couple of hours on Monday?
Well, we obviously didn't expect the decision because we wouldn't have known in advance.
Yeah, well, we wouldn't have known in advance, I'm sure. Now, the question, of course, is why didn't you know this? Because the CDC already got slapped on the head by the courts for already encroaching onto property rights as they exist in America. So they should have probably speculated that this was going to go this way at some point. Everybody has known that many of these dictatorial types of pandemic response laws have all been exceeding the scope of what, in my opinion, was justified under the law.
how a court would act. And we disagreed with the decision immediately. So the immediate steps were to determine what power we had to respond to that. Obviously, that came in the form of the Department of Justice, came in the form of the CDC acting and putting out the statements that they did. But we also don't take photos of flights as data about how the country reacts to issues.
You should. It might be a good indicator because those polling numbers aren't looking pretty good. It seems like maybe the policies are responsible for some of those poll numbers. And when people are reacting to the policy changes, maybe that's a good red flag for you, that policy that people are thrilled is no longer in effect, that you implemented is a bad policy. It would cause normal people to change directions. But these aren't normal people. They're, we're going to appeal this. This is ridiculous. So here's Jen.
As whether they're ripping off their masks or not. I mean, our focus here was seeing what power we had to preserve what we felt was in the public health interest of the country.
Yeah, so they're going to appeal it, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Changing gears, we take a look at the media hyperventilating over this Trump-Piers Morgan interview. Apparently, according to them, Trump, you can see here on Drudge, said, turn the cameras off, and how all hell broke loose and he had a meltdown and he kind of walked off the set. Grumpy Trumpy is what the Sun is reporting. And Piers Morgan and many others are sort of framing this as though Donald Trump got very angry and stormed off the set. Here's what the promo looks like. 3.2 million views.
Okay, Piers, I'm ready.
A former president in denial.
I'll be completely straight with you to your face.
Former president in denial.
I think I'm a very honest man. Much more honest than you, actually.
Really?
Yeah.
It was a free and fair election. You lost.
Only a fool would think that.
You think I'm a fool?
And so they're going back and forth at each other, and you can see it's very contentious clips.
I do now, yeah.
With respect,
excuse me.
Okay, with respect, you haven't produced the hard evidence.
Excuse me.
The most explosive.
All of that is very Trump. I don't doubt that any of those conversations or those clips or the excuse me happened. None of that stuff. But what happened is the framing of the exit. Let's watch.
Interview of the year.
I don't think you're real.
I realize I'm not like...
Very dishonest. Let's finish up the interview.
Morgan versus
Whoa.
Turn the
Trump.
camera off.
Did he just get up and leave?
Only on
Very
Talk.
dishonest. So you can see Piers Morgan, who's, basically a tabloid guy, I believe, is kind of somebody who is really, turning this into like a boxing event or something. They had this big blowout. And he is now Piers Morgan, uncensored. Donald Trump, he got this really shocking interview with the president. Well, Donald Trump says, no, that didn't happen. He came out with this statement, April 20th, says, here's the statement by Donald Trump. If you didn't know, 45th president of the United States. Piers Morgan, like the rest of the fake news media, writes Trump, attempted to unlawfully and deceptively edit this hour-long, or his long and tedious interview with me. He wanted to make it look like I walked out of the interview when my time limit of 20 minutes went over by an hour. Good news is the interview was taped by us as a means of keeping him honest. The interview was actually very strong on the election issue, with me calling him, quote, a fool. For those who want to make Piers look bad, compare his video promo and how it was doctored to the real thing. Hopefully, they will now be doing some big changes to their final product. It just shows, however, what I have to deal with in the fake news media. He went out of his way to deceptively edit an interview and got caught. That is the big story, isn't it? Listen to the audio here. And so he did share that. Breitbart has a copy of it, and they're going to summarize it for us. We'll play a little bit of it. You can see here it's 7 minutes, so I'm not going to sit here through the whole thing. But audio provided by former Trump and his team showed that they edited this thing. 30-second promotional clip released on Wednesday. Full story seems to indicate that they selectively and deceptively edited it. The 30-second clip that Morgan's team released splashed across the tabloids, and we just listened to that whole clip, but that's not what happened, they write. Not even close. Trump spent more than an hour with Morgan, and the way they clipped this together, it calls it Morgan versus Trump, just to promote the interview. Most of the moments had nothing to do with the election issue at all. Full audio in the last bit of the interview show that Trump was standing up and walking away, saying, turn the camera off. But the audio file, very different. 7.5 minutes long, Trump's spokesman, Taylor Budowich, interjecting in the middle of the interview, saying, hey, Piers Morgan, we're out of time. Wrap it up. He says, quote, we're an hour in. We need to wrap up. Morgan responds, begging for more time. Just a few quick questions. Morgan says, thank you. Morgan asks Trump to define the meaning of biological male. Next asks him about questions about pressures on his family. Trump answered by saying family loves the country, saved tens of millions of lives. Morgan's talking about mandates. Morgan asked Trump if he accepts the criticism that some have leveled against the country, and they wrap it up. Says, I think people are going to be very happy in the rest of the interview. And so we get a snippet of that. Trump says, I'm a very honest man. Morgan replies, is that true? He says, yeah, I think I'm a very honest man. Much more honest than you, actually. Really? Morgan says, yeah, because I don't think you're real. Trump says, yeah, I think I'm a much more honest person in most ways than, and Morgan says, well, why am I not real? He says, look, we're not going to get into that here. Let's finish up the interview. Go ahead. Because they're an hour into this thing now, and Trump had agreed to 20 minutes. My question was this, Morgan asks, what message do you have for people saying that if you run again, it's going to be a problem? And Trump goes on with a big answer. Morgan asks a question about The Apprentice. Buttigieg then jumps in and says, you've done the last question 4 times now, Piers. I feel like you're lying at this point. Trump interjects and says, yeah, very deceptive, very deceptive. You've said last questions 4 times, Buttigieg says. And Morgan says, yeah, but I haven't asked about, I wanted to end with your hole-in-one. And he knows Trump can't let that one go. So Trump says, I wasn't going to answer any more questions, but I guess I'll take that one. Morgan asks him about it, and Trump says, yeah, go ahead. And he agrees. After that's over, Morgan agrees the interview is over and thanks Trump for a great interview. They're unhooking the microphones. Trump is getting up, ready to leave. Then he says, turn the camera off. Another staffer says, turn off the mics too. Trump says, very dishonest, as the audio file then ends. And we can listen to some of this here on SoundCloud over from Breitbart. If you want to read the full article, of course, go check that out.
We need a
7 minutes.
Quick questions and then
Thank you.
That's Buttigieg. Hey, we're about done here.
Questions being put to lots of politicians right now is,
And that's Piers Morgan. Now we'll fast forward to the end.
Did you do that?
Probably happened. Probably happened.
They're laughing.
I'm sure it happened.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
We're done. Appreciate it.
That was a great interview.
That was a great interview for Morgan. Agreed. Turn the camera off. And the audio goes off. So it doesn't seem like he stormed off at all. Doesn't seem like a meltdown at all. Seems like they had a very reasonable interview. Piers Morgan, yeah, great interview. Thanks for your time. Thanks for stopping by. But the rest of the media, of course, is going to beat this thing into the ground because it's going to get ratings and clicks. And that's what they want. Donald Trump brings the ratings, brings the clicks. And so they'll run with a headline that kind of is a little bit dishonest, if not extremely dishonest, because it didn't happen that way at all. Let's jump over to locals. We've got grouchy old cat lady here sharing a story saying Biden to stop Ukrainians getting in at the southern border, Title 42. Says, what a hypocrite. Ukrainian refugees must have a sponsor in the U.S. and be vaccinated, and any Ukrainian trying to enter the southern border will be turned away. But everyone else is business as usual? It doesn't surprise me at all. Who knows what they're doing? This is over from the Daily Mail, and it says, yeah, Biden announced Uniting for Ukraine program to accept that 100,000 refugees starts April 25th. Refugees can apply through a new program. Last month, border officials detained 5,000 Ukrainians entered the U.S. And it says refugees must have a sponsor and be vaccinated against COVID. Yeah, so there's some immigration protocols for certain people coming into this country. For others, some would say in the order of several 100,000 a month, really don't have to worry about any of those things. So it's tough to be Ukrainian. Just go to the southern border and come on in. Nobody cares. Here, we've got some other articles coming from grouchy old cat lady. Follow the Dots, sharing an article about, some protocols. Another story from grouchy old cat lady here, sharing Alex Jones reaching out to the Justice Department about a January 6th interview. And a lot of people are saying, Alex Jones is in a precarious position right now. He sort of filed Chapter 11 to restructure some of his debts because of what's happening with Sandy Hook and those lawsuits. And he's also under the thumb a little bit of the fake January 6th Select Committee. So it sounds like apparently he may, his lawyers may be reaching out to them to talk about an interview or a conversation about this. So I don't know exactly sort of what his game plan is, but there's a lot of these conversations taking place. And so we'll see where that one goes. We have another one saying Elon Musk doesn't have to keep quiet about Tesla shareholder lawsuits. Three Girlies is here, says Judge ponders, sharing a link from the Epoch Times. Judge ponders if the decision tree that seeded the Trump secret server claim can be barred in the Sussman trial. We did a deep dive on some of the Sussman stuff earlier. April 6 filings. Looks like Durham sought to compel the DNC Democrats and others to hand over attorney-client privilege documents. Much of that we have talked about. Fusion GPS, Clinton, DNC, very recently, I think it's this week, they filed massive motions to intervene. They want to stop all of that attorney-client privilege stuff from going over to Durham. They don't even want the judge to look at it. Hillary Clinton was saying that in Mark Elias's declaration that all of that should not even be disclosed to the judge for an ex parte in-camera review proceeding. Doesn't want the judge to see it, doesn't want the public to see it, wants it all held under seal. So there's a lot, I would presume, there. They didn't seem all that panicky. There was sort of a spectrum of panic. I don't think that Perkins Coie showed their cards at all. They had a very good poker face in this. The Fusion GPS lawyers, their motion to intervene felt a little bit panicky to me. But you can see that it's going to continue to go on. We're going to follow this one in depth. There is so much activity going on right now, and it's going to be a lot of fun to follow. Truman's responding to yesterday's headline, says, great job mentioning a good thing that Biden did. Nuclear. Precisely as you said, with more nuclear energy abundance, we could desalinate, capture carbon, make fertilizer, make carbon neutral biodiesels. Regardless of your opinion of global warming, we not only benefit financially, but we wouldn't be enriching China. Irrespective, thorium's efficiency, MSR would be just fine with uranium. Molten salt is a spectacular approach. This is some pretty intelligent stuff here. High pressure water, the inefficiency of low temperature deltas. Whew. Instead, the molten salts, low pressure, salt ranges liquid 300 to 700 degrees Celsius. It's complicated business, yeah. Truman knows a lot more about this than I do. I just like the idea of abundant, cheap energy because I think that that provides value to everybody. Everybody can do more. We can clean up the whole stinking world if we have cheap, limitless energy. Speech Unleashed is here. Psaki sobs over the Florida parental rights bill. I saw this headline speech. She's on a podcast. She's sort of transitioning. You know, she's kind of done with the White House, and can you really blame her? It's kind of a mess over there. Looking for an exit, MSNBC, Pod Save America, all that stuff. So doesn't surprise me a bit. Mr. MVP sharing, talking about the strike force taking place at the southern border, 26 governors creating a strike force to go deal with it since the feds won't handle any of this stuff. Thanks for sharing that. We have another one. Three girlies, political cartoon of the day, still leading from behind. Who's actually running the country? And I think that's Obama. Look at those ears in the Easter Bunny suit, which of course is a great, great political cartoon from Branko. Love the stories. Thank you, everybody, for sharing those over on Locals. And let's take a look at some YouTube member comments. We see here Lorena Darby was commenting on yesterday's headlines show. Says, hi, Robert. For the longest time, I've been wondering who's running the White House, making all the important government decisions. Then the other night, watching TV, I got my answer. The Easter Bunny. I can finally sleep at night. And that is very closely related to the political cartoon from Three Girlies. MJ says, what's the watch time? People... And hi, Rob. It's always fun to see you. Always fun to see you. Also, MJ. The videos release sort of whenever. It kind of depends on how my schedule throughout the day looks. We have another one from Peas and Butter. Says, is Hillary's license to practice law still active? If not, then how can she claim attorney-client privilege? It's a good question. I don't know if it is. I doubt it. I think most of these people give that up once they make their first $100 million grifting off the American taxpayers. But the argument here is that she is the client. And so you don't actually have to be a lawyer to maintain the attorney-client privilege. It's like people hire us all the time, and they're not lawyers. They hire us to help them with a legal problem. They are the holder of that privilege. You know, it's sort of meant to protect them so that they feel that they can have candor with their lawyers and they can talk about the issues. Sort of like, you want to be able to talk to your doctor about what's going on so your doctor can help you. And if your doctor is going to turn around and rat you out to the insurance companies or, post all of your medical ailments on the internet or something like that, it's going to shatter that relationship. So the doctor just can't decide to do those things because you kind of hold that to some degree, right? You hold those rights. Same type of concept exists in the law. You don't have to be a lawyer to be the beneficiary of the attorney-client privilege. And the other comments came in on yesterday's show, and I appreciate your support, everybody. Thank you so much. And that looks like it's it for us for the headlines on the day. I want to thank you for spending some time with me here today to go through some of the news and leave some comments and join one of our communities, whether it's over on Locals or a member here. I certainly appreciate your support. It does go a long way. And we will be back here tomorrow. I do have a full day at the office this afternoon, so I'm not sure if I'm going to have any other additional releases today. We had a big Sussman update this week, a big Bannon update. We're going to continue to follow both of those. I know, by the way, there's an Amber Heard and Johnny Depp trial going on that's capturing a lot of eyeballs. I haven't paid any attention to it other than just sort of scrolling past the headlines. I know that Legal Bites on YouTube is doing mega streams. I was browsing around YouTube yesterday and she had been going for 10 hours, I think. 10-hour stream. It's crazy. So if you're interested in that, go check her out. She's really doing a great job. And I know Ricada and many others are covering this. So if you're interested in any of the Amber, Johnny stuff, those are the places to go to get some of that stuff. We'll be back here tomorrow with headlines, certainly. If I have some additional drops, I'll get those out tonight, but not sure if I'll be able to do that just based on my schedule. Regardless, that means that I will certainly see you tomorrow. I want to wish you a very good rest of your day, and I'll see you on the next one.